Okay, Fillmore.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if we need to probably do that anything, but regarding chair, I expect either you or Bill maybe rather than Eddie or I, just as being alternates.
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. Bill, I nominate Bill.
Second.
I can't write. I can't take no. I can't fill out fill out the stuff. I literally. I mean, I can write barely with the way my hand is right now.
I agree with Bill as the chair. So moved.
Okay, then I nominate Eddie.
Present yet?
I can't do it. I'm recusing, and I'm only an
Yeah.
alternate. We're like second tier BAR members. We don't even really count.
Yeah, we get what both.
Yeah, I was going to nominate Mr. Bello, but I understand he has to recuse.
Yeah, and I don't count. Alternates can't be chairs. It's in the bylaws.
I trust you, Eddie.
I don't think so.
Section 22B.
Yeah, no, I think Mr. Faber would make an excellent chair.
Not that I just spilled stuff all down the front of my thing, so probably not. But anyway. See.
Okay, are we ready to go live? We're right at 4:30. Unless my clock is slow.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay, everybody, we are live and we've got attendees filling up. And if y'all will give me 1 second, I just need to switch screens and I'll have the presentation open so we can begin. Okay. So I've actually got our everyone voting on our chair as our first item. So if y'all want, I will run through protocol real quick and then y'all can officially vote unless you already want to argue over it some more. To participate in the virtual board meeting, please refer to the following instructions. We have the meeting link and phone call. All of this is going out, so I'm not going to run through all of it. Written comments are received by the board in advance of the meeting and will be acknowledged into the record and summarized. If this is a concern, you're encouraged to sign up and speak, which we do have one written comment, I believe. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during your presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Videos and microphone has been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board members or staff, will only be given the capability to speak when they are called on during the public comment period. Chat and Q&A functions have been disabled for everyone. Applicants, all team members, and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in an in-person meeting, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you have registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you will need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called in order by project. Staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim for accuracy. If a board member needs to recuse, he or she will temporarily be removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on the Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they're ready to return to the regular meeting. The results and staff comments will be posted on the city website, and these proceedings are being recorded and broadcast to the City of Charleston's YouTube channel. So are we prepared to vote for a temporary chairperson?
Yes, is Mr. Huey present? Sorry, I can't see, but I respectfully would nominate Bill.
I will second that.
All right, in lieu of a chairperson, can we take a vote? Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Bello,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Fava,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Huey. You're muted.
You're muted, Bill.
Probably best that he's muted.
Yeah, so
I said reluctantly, I'll vote okay on that. Yeah, I should have
Thank you.
stayed muted.
Thank you, Bill.
thank you, Bill.
Sure.
Yes,
Sure.
thank you.
Okay. Procedurally, I'm sorry, Frankie, do I need to read the meeting procedure? And do you have that graphic that I might be able to read from? I'm sorry, I don't have it.
I'm sorry, I sent you
Oh.
the chairman's cheat sheet, but I can resend it to you.
Oh, okay. Maybe you did. I was looking at the wrong email. Let me just
That's
one
okay.
second. Sorry. I'm sorry. Would that have just come, Frankie?
I sent it yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay. I apologize. You didn't send it to just me, I hope.
No, I sent it to
Okay.
everyone.
Okay. I was hoping someone else would be doing this, as you can tell. I apologize. Okay. Chairman's cheat
I
sheet.
don't know if you need to reset your Zoom to a window instead of a screen. Does that make sense?
Is that, who are you speaking with, Tori?
I was talking to Frankie.
Frankie.
All
Okay.
right.
Yeah, you might want to reset your Zoom screen share just to that window of the presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Better?
Nope,
All right.
got your inbox.
Okay. Ready? All right.
Almost. We're getting there. There we go.
All right. All right. So I need to go ahead and read through them, the virtual meeting protocol. Welcome to the February 10th, 2022 BAR small virtual meeting. My name is Bill Huey. I'm the temporary acting chairperson in the absence of our regular chairperson. The other board members present this afternoon are Fillmore Wilson. We also have Eddie Bello and Eddie Fava. City staff present are Frankie Pinto, Senior Preservation Planner, and Tori Parrish, city architect. The order of the meeting will be as follows. There'll be an introduction overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the public. That will be followed up by an application presentation, a 10-minute time limit, or as determined by the chair, and any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state your name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, owners, developers, designers, consultants, etc., should speak during this portion rather than in public comment. The next portion would be public comment. It's a 10-minute time limit or equivalent to applicant presentation as determined by the chairperson. The applicant does not respond to comments made during public comment. Please clearly state your name for the record. Then we'll have city staff's comments and recommendation. And that will be followed up by an applicant response or clarification to public comment and city staff comments, period, with a 5-minute time limit. And then there will be board discussion and a vote. The applicant presentation and public comment is now closed. Applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising a hand and waiting to be called upon, but otherwise may only speak if asked a question by a board member. And do we have any deferrals or withdrawals tonight, Frankie?
We do, we'll have a deferral or recusal rather on number 5 and number 7. Mr. Bella will be recusing.
Great. All
And I
right.
can remind you as well.
Okay. With that, we I guess are prepared to begin the meeting. We're going to start with agenda item number 2, number 8, Lawrence Street. Request for partial demolition of historic structure and repairs to front porch. It's not rated. It's on the west side, construction circa 1930 in the historic materials demolition purview area. Is the applicant present?
I'm going to run through the context first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Can you please? Thank you, Frankie. I
Here we go.
apologize.
I've got an aerial of the property in question. And as y'all remember, this is the front of the home. Just giving y'all another angle on it. It's looking south on Lawrence. Can't remember which direction it is, hard. And then the other direction on Lawrence. We have a few Sanborns. We did not see in Sanborns evidence of a front porch. And now we are ready for the applicant presentation.
Real quick, just a couple of procedural things as we work out some staff changes. If you can, Frankie, if you can make me co-host, I will let everybody in and out of the meeting.
I'm so sorry, Tori. I
That's
thought I
okay.
did
No,
that.
I didn't even think to ask it earlier. I just now realized I can't let them in and out. Don't worry. And then
I thought I did that after IT logged out.
there we go. And then I have to say that I don't have the applicant's name for this one because it was under the company's name. Everything else, I'll be able to let everybody in and out.
It's okay. I think I know which one he is.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Gunter, are you there?
Someone may be muted.
Yeah, he's still muted, isn't he?
Yes.
Mr.
All
Guthrie,
right,
you may be muted.
I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
I
Thank
can
you.
hear you.
This is Marty Gunter with MAG Construction Services. I am the owner of 8 Lawrence Street that we looked at this morning. And Frankie, if you want to go to the pictures first. And they're going to be very similar to the pictures that we just went through and saw a few seconds ago.
This is the front of the house. We applied for and received a permit to remove the asbestos and the vinyl siding on the home on December 21st with the idea of going back with hardy siding. And we have removed all of the asbestos siding that you can see in this picture. And Frankie, if you'll go down to the next picture, I believe it shows the left side of the home with the asbestos siding going down that way. And all of that has been removed. And if you could go to the next slide. And the right side of the home had vinyl siding, but underneath it was asbestos. So we had a bait and insulate come in and remove all of the asbestos around the house. And I was asked to put some pictures of the little cottage in the back. And as you can see down the alley there's a little view of that cottage. And this is the front of the cottage. You can go to the next slide, Frankie. And that's the left side of that little cottage in the back. And then the next picture, I believe is the right side of it. And that might be the last picture. I would know if you go down to the next picture, it's down the right side of it between the neighbor's property and our building. And the next slide, Frankie, is the left side of the building, which is the property line, zero property line along that side. And we are looking to replace the siding on that little cottage as well. But if you could go back to that first picture showing the front of the house again, Frankie. On that front side, we like to remove that front porch as it's in disrepair and replace it so we can match it as close as possible to what is there now. We'd also like that block wall in the front to take it down low enough that we can add a little planter in the front so it does not obstruct the view of the front porch. As well as on the stairs entering the porch, they are not to code right now, and we are going to have to do a little bit of a modification to the concrete slab so we can move the steps back just a little bit so that we can get the steps in the front so that we're not out onto the public right away in the sidewalk, but we are able to meet code with the steps. We are
Real
hoping-
quick, Mr. Gunther, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just to remind you, the board will not be reviewing any new or proposed construction.
Okay.
We're primarily reviewing the demolition, but I just wanted to state that before you spend a lot of time describing the future.
Okay.
Thank you there.
All right, thank you. And we are hoping to salvage the metal roof as that front porch comes down to reuse as much of it as possible. On the front porch as well, we are wanting to remove and replace the front doors that are a Lowe's grade metal doors. And the windows as well on the house. We are looking to, since we've got kind of a variety of windows on the home, that we are looking to remove and replace the windows as well. And Frankie, if you go to the third picture, I think it shows the right side of the home. There's a little bump out towards the back. We are wanting to remove that because after we remove the asbestos siding, the wood underneath it was just in bad shape. So we wanted to remove that. And the plans call for it going back just the same shape that it is now. And I think that might be it. I also had submitted the architectural plans, but we are not going looking at what's going back. So I don't know if that would do us any good to go through those architectural drawings at this time. So
Yes, sir. We usually don't consider what's going to be coming in the future. So unless you feel there's a compelling need, we don't usually look at those.
I do not think so. So I think I'm done presenting now and open to questions.
Are there any questions from the board members or Mr. Guy?
Fillmore Wilson here. Marty, I have one question. I noticed on the drawings that which of course, as Bill indicated, we don't have purview over what's going back, but I did notice there was a note about removing the fireplaces. And I couldn't see from the photographs very well if there was a chimney through the roof or if the chimneys were gone. Could you verify that for me?
There was a chimney that was partially intact. When we went into the house, the fireplaces on the inside were full of brick and soot and I guess old mortar and sand. It had just filled up the whole cavities of them, and it was coming down.
Okay, so there is currently not an intact chimney
No.
through the roof.
No, there is not. No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions from board members? Okay, guess we can move. Everybody good? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, guess we can move on to public comment.
Yes,
Is
sir.
anyone
We have
here?
2 members of the public who wish to speak, and we'll start with Anna Catherine Carroll when she is on the line. Okay.
Thank
Correct.
you, Tori. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society appreciated the opportunity to visit the site this morning. We are concerned with the level of demolition of historic material represented in this submittal, which we realize differs slightly from what the applicant has stated verbally. For instance, the plans do indicate that the roof will be removed and replaced with shingle, but during the meeting and this morning, the applicant has expressed an intent to salvage the existing. But per the submittal that's before you, we are specifically concerned with the request to remove the standing seam metal roof, all existing windows, and what appears to be all existing siding. We're a little bit unclear on that. Based on our observation on site, the original wood siding on the primary elevations visible from the street are in good condition, and a majority of the historic windows also appear to be salvageable. We're of course not opposed to removing the later vinyl replacements. We are also optimistic that the roof can be saved. All materials should be closely examined with staff to determine what historic fabric can be repaired and preserved, and we advocate that any necessary replacement be done in kind. In general, we ask for a more conservative approach to removal of materials, adhering to the Secretary of the Interior standards, removing only what necessitates replacement. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public?
Yes, there is. We've got April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the request for partial demolition of the historic structure at 8 Lawrence Street, and we appreciate the opportunity for the site visit this morning. We are pleased to see this historic house is going to be rehabilitated. At the site visit, we noticed that several of the 6 light window sash were original. We recommend denial of any request to replace these sash. They should be repaired rather than replaced. Thank you.
That concludes
Ms. Wood.
public comment. Sorry.
Thank you, Tori. I guess we're ready for city staff comments and recommendations.
Staff observed that the front porch is not original to the house. This was evident when evaluating Sanborn maps. The areas and elements affected with the proposal lack character defining features, and there is minimal visibility of the rear addition being demoed. Staff comments, the windows appear to be original wood and have 6/6 grid pattern with the exception of the one vinyl window on the south side. These windows should be repaired rather than removed. Staff recommends approval with staff comments.
Thank you, Frankie. Does the applicant have any response or clarification to public or city staff comments?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. After looking at the roof, we do want to salvage the metal roof and recoat it, and not rip off the metal roof and put the shingles. I know the architect had that on his drawings, but we're hoping that we can salvage that roof and recoat it. And we are hoping that we can work on the windows and salvage those 6/6. With the new window, and I know you're not concerned with the new material going in, but when we add new windows in, I know in the bedrooms, they have to be egress. And I just wanted to make sure that we do what's proper back there for us to have the egress windows as well. So that's all the comments I've got now.
Thank you. So now we'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Well, I'll start. I agree with the preservation groups and city staff. So we need to clarify that the roof is to be retained, like we talked about on staff. So, I mean, at the site meeting. So I agree with that. On the windows, if they can be repaired, it's definitely much better if we can keep those. So I don't have a huge issue with the removal of the rear as proposed. We didn't go inside, but from what I could tell, it looks to be in very poor condition. And my guess is, and I could be wrong, but my guess is that the framing would have to be completely replaced anyway. And it did not seem to be historically significant, that the part that they want to demolish. So I'm in support of the addition or the portion to be removed, but I do agree that the windows, where possible, should be retained and repaired, and the roof should be retained.
I would agree with everything Mr. Bello just said.
Fillmore Wilson here. I agree with what Mr. Bello has said as well, and staff's comments. I think that excuse my barking dog. I'm alone in the house. I think that an effort should be made to repair the historic windows and the siding where possible, and I appreciate the effort on the applicant's part to save the roof. I just think that we probably need a staff comment regarding the preservation of the windows and the existing siding.
I will say, if once the applicant gets into it and say there's only a handful of windows that can be replaced or restored, say there's 4. I don't know. I mean, I'm not super optimistic that a lot can be salvaged, but hopefully they can. That I'd ask that those couple be put towards the front of the house if there's a way to I'm guessing they're fairly similar in size, so that the impact to the street is less. I don't know if we have purview over that, but if you can only keep, say, 4, put them where they can be seen from the street, and then the new windows could be in the back. All right, well, I'll make a motion then. Approval of the demolition as proposed, retain the roof, and repair the windows. And I don't know that we talked much about, and I'll just leave it at that, and with details of staff.
I hope I get these right. Eddie has a motion on the floor. Was this for basically it's for approval, so we're calling this final approval. Is that
Yes,
Okay.
final approval.
for final approval? Eddie, did you mention staff's comments?
Yes, with staff comments, which is keeping the windows, retaining the roof,
Retaining the roof, keeping the windows,
and
and
approval of the demolition request.
approval of demolition. Okay,
All
so
that.
I'm hoping one of you guys can read these for me because I'm not good at transcripts here. So could someone just, I'm looking towards Frankie or Tori or any
I
board.
was trying to
member.
type it at the same time.
Okay.
Bill, Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes,
Related to Mr. Bella's motion and the plans, there is no mention of the siding in the demolition request. And so do we need to put a caveat about the siding, or is everyone okay with the
I left that out. I understand the concern to keep as much of the siding as possible. I think it's going to be difficult. Fillmore, you would know better than me.
I agree. I don't think there's a ton of it that will be salvageable.
I don't either. You can stand there and see through the building in many places, and I appreciate the preservation group saying let's keep every piece of siding we can, but I think that's a bit to ask for this house. If we keep the form and can keep the windows, I think we're doing pretty well.
I do not disagree with that. I just want to make sure we were all clear about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a standing motion on the floor from Eddie for final approval with staff's comments, including retention of the existing roof, existing windows, and final approval of the demolition as requested. Is there a second?
Fillmore, I'll second.
Okay, there's a second from Fillmore. We'll call a vote. Eddie? Eddie Bello.
Yay in favor.
Eddie Fava.
Yay in favor.
Fillmore.
Yay in favor.
And chair votes yay as well. It's majority, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Okay.
time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Is this item 3? Correct.
Yes,
Agenda
sir.
item number 3, it's 540 King Street. Request for new construction in the Old and Historic District. This is for the mock-up panel review for the new construction in the Old and Historic District.
Okay,
Frankie?
I've got a couple elevations for you guys of the approved drawings, just to remind you of the project itself. And with that, I will turn it over to the applicant.
He's in the meeting.
Mr. Young, are you with us? Are you muted?
Unmute. Okay. Second time I've done that in the last week. Sorry about that. Simmons Young here tonight, this afternoon, and on behalf of Vander King LLC. We appreciate your time tonight, as well as the time you spent this morning coming out to visit the site. And our whole team is pleased to be working on this infill project on Upper King, replacing a parking lot and dedicating a lot of resources to building on a challenging and narrow site. I think we covered a lot of the questions that may have come up this morning. I'm happy to answer any that you may have now. I think you've got the photos in front of you. We could click through those. I know y'all's time is valuable, so I won't go into too much more.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Young. Do any board members have any questions for the applicant? No questions? Okay, We'll move on to public comment.
We have no public comment for this one.
No public comment. Do we have city staff's comments and recommendation?
Staff comments. The color of the sealant at the stucco joints, while freshly applied, is much warmer than and will not blend into the stucco. It should be tweaked to better harmonize with the stucco color. There was no sealant placed around the windows in the mock-up, but there was a discussion of it being black to match the window. The sealant color around the window should be made to blend in with the brick and mortar colors, and then it should be held back just enough from the window to give a clean manufactured edge. This will provide a clean edge rather than a rough one that follows the masonry. The window lintel should be painted the generalized brick mortar color also. Sill flashing at the window is missing and should be installed if part of the design. The dog tooth at the brick panel is missing. Treatment and mortar joints is inconsistent on the panel with messier flush joints at the sill and at the lower portion of the brick wall and concave joints at the higher portion of the panel. Joints should be treated consistent. We wanted to confirm the stucco system. The Stoa Powerwall system integrates a drainage channel plane behind the stucco and allows the stucco to act as a rain screen. The stucco panel is smooth and even. However, the stucco work should be coordinated with the joint locations in order to eliminate any cold joints that's evident at the lower portion of the stucco panel. Stucco joints are a critical part of the design. In fact, they are most prominent at ground level where they mimic stonework. The stucco joints in the mock-up should demonstrate the joint at outside and inside corners. The joint in the mock-up panel should wrap the corner of the panel to demonstrate how these will appear. The approved colors for the door that is recessed in the stucco portion against King Street is approved for Brandywine with this color code, or Chalmers Cobblestone, which is the Huron color. The piazza ceiling was proposed in piazza blue on site, which is appropriate, and pewter green is approved for the storefronts. No weeps, brick control joints, or through wall flashing are evident on the mock-up panel. Staff will confirm the requirements that were part of this panel. Staff recommendation is denial as the mock-up is incomplete with several critical elements missing.
Thank you, Frankie. Does the applicant have any response to city staff comments?
That's a lot of comments. I do have some responses. The one that can we go back one screen so I could just see in front of me 1 through 7. The sealant, I feel that if you look around town, that the color of the sealant often will match the window. It seems to go way more that way. I understand what we discussed this morning about the weather joint and the way that it can bleed in there. I know it can be done without that being an issue because of work we did on 61 Vandross with the same item. Sealant placed to the around the window. Understand there was no sealant. The window lintel should be painted. Generalized brick mortar color also. Understood. Still flashing at the windows missing should be installed. Understood. Dog tooth at the brick panel is missing. Understood. Treatment of the mortar joints is inconsistent on the panel with messier flush joints at the sill. Okay. Confirm the stucco system. So I wanted some clarification on that from staff. That it is, you're asking if it is the Stowe Powerwall and what we put behind it.
We were confirming if it was the Stowe Powerwall.
We knew it was a Stowe system, but outside of that.
I will send you the cut sheets. Okay, and then 8, can I take one quick look? And I'm sorry to do this on the screen like this, but stucco panel is smooth and even, coordinated with the joint locations, eliminating cold joints. Okay, I might need some clarification on that, but if it's a crack at the bottom that we're looking at, I know what you're talking about. Stucco joints are critical part of the design. Demonstrate the joint outside and inside corners. Joints in the mock-up panel should wrap the corner of the panel, demonstrate how these will appear. Okay, I understand that. The proposed colors for the door that is recessed into the stucco portion against King Street is approved for Brandywine. Okay, thank you. No weeps, brick. Okay, I understand that you want to see what those look like. Thank you for allowing me to go through this with you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote.
Well, I'll start this one too. I agree with all staff comments, except I don't think we should approve the colors. I'm not particularly worried about colors, but I don't think we've had enough to review how the colors look. I mean, I know what Piazza Blue looks like, but there's literally 10 different Piazza Blues. So the fact that we didn't have any sealant to review, the brick hadn't been cleaned, there's no flashing. I mean, I don't really think this should even be discussed. We'll just have to review it next time when it's complete. So I know it's not necessarily the architect's fault, but you know, it's a little frustrating. It's a bit of a waste of time to go out there and nothing was done. So I would just move for denial with staff comments except for number 10, which was approving the colors.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor from Eddie for denial with staff's comments included except for item 10. Is that correct, Eddie?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Fillmore, I'll second.
Fillmore, can I make an amendment to that motion, maybe? Sorry, before you do. I
I'll
mean, just
withdraw
quick,
my second.
sorry, just briefly. I would agree again that it just wasn't ready, but in reference to staff comments, the only other one, I think if the applicant would want to demonstrate the options related to sealant around the windows in number 2, we've done it both ways as well. So
Yeah.
so I would think that that's worth kind of revisiting when it comes up again. But other than that, 2 and 10, and as the motion had been presented before.
I'll agree with that. And I have no doubt the building will be handsome and the design's good, but the panel just wasn't complete. So I wasn't comfortable with approving. But yeah, I agree. I agree with the architect that the sealant may be better just dark as long as it's sort of recessed from the window frame. I would go with that. But again, we don't know until we see it. So.
Thank you. So now that motion is still live on the floor. It was for denial with staff's comments with the exemption of comment number 10, and now a board comment to allow the applicant to provide 2 alternate window sealant detailed samples for the board to review.
Yes, I'll
Is
accept that. Good.
Is that right?
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a second for that motion?
Fillmore, I'll second.
Thank you, Fillmore. Go ahead and call the vote. Eddie Bello,
Yay in favor.
Eddie Fava,
Yay in favor?
Fillmore.
Yay in favor.
The chair votes yay in favor as well. Motion passes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4, number 32 Ann Street.
Okay, you guys are somewhat familiar with this already. We reviewed 32 Ann Street previously, the new lighted sign for the music farm. They were proposing a faux neon. And just to remind you of the location, this is the aerial. This is the existing structure. Fortunately, you can't see the sign in this picture. More photos of the existing site. Looking east on Ann and west on Ann. And then the 1888 and 1955 Sanborn structure. And I'm going to let the applicant take it from there.
Right, we've brought in Whitney Powers, Gil Schuler, either Sarah or Greg Pavone, and Charles Comodi.
Thank you. We are supplemented the material that we had from the previous presentation. Is there another slide, please, for the those additional drawings? So this is a drawing that illustrates, and maybe I should just let Greg. Greg, are you on to basically present this material, this supplemental material, which are relative to the sign technology? Hello.
All right. Am I on?
You are.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. We have a kid out with COVID, so Sarah borrowed my computer, so I apologize for her name on there. So this is a supplemental sign. Thank you for your time, by the way. I did not know I was presenting this material, so I'll do my best to fumble through. But I am obviously familiar with it. This is a graphic design by Gil Schuler. The white in the top represents a push-through acrylic. What we did here, or what we're trying and proposing, is to avoid using neon tubing. The client is concerned with the upkeep of neon, which unfortunately I agree with the proximity and the nature of their business. We spend an exorbitant amount of time fixing broken glass. So what we're trying to do is use a push-through acrylic substitute. Gil's design with these outline strokes kind of lends itself to be a double tubed neon aesthetic. And so this would be a more resilient and more efficient substitute. So the 4 pictures on the bottom is a sign that was crafted, not by myself, but in Chicago. And you can kind of see the double stroke and dollop is a push through acrylic. And the aesthetic clearly speaks to traditional neon signs. But in this case, it's just a routed material that's pushed through the face substrate. So it's kind of proud by 3/8 to 1/2 an inch of white acrylic, which is then backlit with internal LEDs. I understand there is some concern about the brightness of the sign. I will say, after discussing the sign with our staff, our concern with the sign design is making it bright enough. With the dimensions of, I think this thing is 4 by 5. Those strokes are the same as neon glass, which is 12 millimeters. So it's very thin. And with its 1/2 inch or 3/8 inch push through depth, it's going to take a lot of LEDs to make this thing super bright. So anyway, I understand there's a sign that was approved that we're a little hesitant to put this thing up against that came out too bright. I've been unable to identify that sign, but I'd be happy to go by and take a look. So this sign won't be brighter than that one or as bright. So anyway, that is that. If you go to the next slide, there's some line cut sheets. There you go. That kind of shows how this thing's done. There's an overlap. So if you go around and you look at the chase signs, or the Basil sign would be a good example. You've got an 1/8 inch face on it that comes out. And so there is a little overlap to the recessed part of the sign. That's it kind of will mirror a more traditional sign construction. And then you can see the LEDs in there. I figure there's probably going to be about 24 units. Unfortunately, it's hard for me, being just a sign crafter, to run any tests to give you like a clear, like a lumen output of it. when we build these things, it takes a fair amount of finesse to get them to work and illuminate the way that we would like them to illuminate. So there's a little back and forth, whether this thing takes 24 LEDs in the strip or 26, we won't unfortunately know until we put this thing together and take a look at it. But again, I mean, if you do reference the sign, you want me to go by and take a look at it, I'd be happy to do that. So anyway, so that's it. I was really here for questions. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You can see a little cross section of how this thing's constructed in that inset there that shows that we take it out of a 3/4 inch strip. So it has a 1/2 inch backing, and then we push that through the face material. So there you go. That's what I got. Thank you.
That was great. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, we did. I mean, and I believe that it's important to let you know that I believe that there were a couple of members of the board who asked for cut sheets on this technology, and it's actually kind of a crafted item rather than something you can hand a cut sheet and just order something and say, I want push through acrylics. I think to Greg's point, then there are lots of applications of this with different sizes of acrylic and so forth. In this specific application, it is meant to be of a small dimension, that acrylic where the light floods the inside of the box and then goes through the acrylic. And there will be a halo around those pieces, but they're only projecting that tiny 3/8 of an inch beyond. So I think to Greg's point, we're not looking at something that is likely to be or to pose a brightness issue. And there may be an opportunity to kind of calibrate this along the way, but hopefully that addresses that particular concern.
I would say, I mean, aesthetically, if this sign were, say it was the Holiday Inn, or a larger scale 20-inch letter with a solid push through, I too would be concerned with the light admitted. If it were in a residential area or facing condominiums or apartments, I wouldn't suggest that. I think for this, aesthetically, the way that the design is, and as it is supposed to look like neon, it will not be as bright as a white glass neon sign, unfortunately. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. But what we're trying to do is just create the aesthetic for the music farm of a destination music venue. I mean, as one that travels around to venues in Austin and Nashville and that sort of thing. I mean, when you go up to an old music venue because it has that iconic sign in the front. This scale of this thing isn't going to be some huge Paramount sign, but aesthetically, it's going to have that craftsmanship behind it that shows that you're looking at something. I mean, it's not going to look plastic. It's going to look like your Chase sign or your Basil sign or some of those vintage ones that we like around town.
Okay, are you done the applicant presentation? Are we good?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Do my fellow board members have any questions of the applicant? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to public comment.
Mr. Chair, there is no public comment for this one.
Thank you, Tori. So we'll move on to city staff comments and recommendation.
Just to remind you of the previous motion, it was deferral to provide the applicant more time to put more information together, and a request for cut sheets and real photo examples of this type. The previous Staff comment was against the use of neon, and that we have done generally supported faux neon. However, staff observations, generally neon is not permitted per the signage policy. Neon is atypical for the city, except in historic cases or on a limited basis on King Street. And BAR policy does not currently address faux neon. Though we do note that faux neon is more sustainable than traditional neon. That being said, we do find the use of neon appropriate for this venue, and we are recommending approval.
Thank you, Frankie. Does the applicant have any response to city staff's comments?
I mean, without wasting any time, can we just real quick, because I have a couple throttled up that you'll be seeing shortly of neon. I was surprised to see a new neon project on Wentworth, which is off of King Street, but we get a million phone calls for the use of traditional neon applications. Is this something that on the peninsula will not be approved in the future? I mean, because there is some on and off, you know, the Scar Factory has neon. We've done neon at Taco Boy and Pacific Boxing Crate. And again, I was surprised to see one, and, you know, kind of thrilled to see one pop up on Wentworth. But when appropriate, is neon still going to be accepted by the BAR, or is this a new move, or are we just trying to throttle it back a little bit without wasting anyone's time? Sorry, I've got things to do too. I apologize.
Tori, I don't know if you have any response to that, or
I would say there are areas where definitely neon's not going to be recommended for approval by staff. And I was also surprised about the neon sign on Wentworth, but it was before my time, and I think, and so it just depends on a lot of things, especially the condition. It's really hard to answer that question with a blanket statement.
Well, like everything else, I think, you know, basically it's a case by case. At least that's typically been my experience, that there are not very many things that that are disallowed or that you write a policy about. And I think Greg's comment is just pointed at this policy statement that about signage, but
well, the policy statements are backed by the ordinance, so we do have policy statements for certain corridors.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I apologize for getting off track.
Well, I will add, I don't know if board members are supposed to talk, but I will add, and I'm only an alternate, a lowly alternate, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but King Street has historically had a lot of very vibrant signage, and over the years it's been, you know, eliminated. And it just like has been said, I don't think there's a blanket statement. I mean, Tori's saying, you know, there's some areas where it's just not appropriate, but I would say in King Street, depending on the design, to me, it's historically appropriate. It's just all on how it's done, right? And so, and you know that. And so to me, I haven't seen the one on Wentworth, but you know, Cigar Factory, it's obviously appropriate. Taco Boy is an easy one, you know, so I guess it just depends on the design. That's how I wouldn't be personally opposed to more on King if they're done well.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
okay, I guess we'll move on into board discussion and a vote.
I guess my comments would be, it looks like it's similar size to what's there, and they've done a good job coming up with an alternative in this location. And as applicant and fellow board members have referenced, in a case-by-case basis, I think in this case it is appropriate. It might be nice that, and I know it's kind of being made custom, but if there is an ability to calibrate it, just for the owner's benefit and everyone else's, if for some reason it pops up too bright or too light, Not making that a declarative or a definitive, but it might be a nice option, but I'd be in support of it as proposed.
Fillmore Wilson here. I agree with Mr. Favor. I'm in support of the application as proposed. To agree with staff comments. And I think this is a very nifty little bit of technology, and certainly more friendly than neon even. And like Mr. Bello, I understand, that there are many parts of the historic district where neon would not be appropriate, but historically it has been, and I kind of like it when it's appropriate.
All right, well, I do too. I mean, I think obviously to me, the music farm is very appropriate, that part of the city. So I'm okay with it. So I'll move for approval with staff comments with the suggestion, if possible, that the brightness can be calibrated or adjusted. If that's something that can be done, it'd be beneficial.
Okay,
I'll second
there's a
that.
motion.
All right.
Eddie has a motion for final approval with staff comments, with the board comment that if possible, the light intensity to be calibrated. Is that correct, Eddie?
Yes, thank you, Bill.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it, Mr. Huey.
Thank you, Eddie. I'll go ahead and call the vote. Eddie Bello,
Yay in favor.
Eddie Fava,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore.
Yay in favor.
The chair votes yay in favor. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, making tracks here. On to the next. I don't have the agenda in front of you. I usually wait for that screen to tee up the next. There we go. Agenda item number 5, 115.5 St. Philip Street.
So I'm
Is the-
recusing.
Oh, and Mr. Bello will be recusing himself for this review. Is the applicant present?
Yes, sir. Ashley Jennings is the applicant, and she's been promoted into the meeting.
Great. All right, Ashley.
And
we're
Mr.
ready.
Bello has been put on hold.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'm Ashley Jennings. I'm here tonight representing my client, Colin Colbert, on the project. When we were here last time, we had several comments from city staff, and then I believe the board deferred the project for architectural direction. So we're here tonight with a new design, and we can move forward.
I'm going to provide a few context slides and then I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just-
I did that. That's Frankie. I'm sorry. That was my fault,
Okay.
Ashley. I
I'm just
apologize.
giving a brief review of the site itself.
Okay. I
So looking
apologize.
down St. Philip's, I know you are all very familiar with this site. A few Sanborns showing the previous structure. And I'll turn it over to the applicant now.
Thanks, Frankie. Like I said previously, I think that the comments were deferred for architectural direction. So if we can move forward to the next slide, please. You can move to the next slide. So here's some images, once again, of the site itself. Next slide, please. And here you can see the remainder of the structure. Next slide, please. And this is a site plan and floor plan. The property is essentially with a 10-foot easement on the south side. We're proposing to occupy about the same portion of the site that the original structure did, with the exception of the front space where the ruin remains, and we're leaving that open as a courtyard. Next slide, please. So here you can see the ground floor plan and the first floor plan, and the proposal for the use is still the same. We're proposing office on the ground floor and 2 apartments above. Next slide, please. And once again, the apartment is a 2-story element, and we are proposing as part of this application a rooftop element. Next slide, please. And here you can see the front elevation. And one of the comments from the staff previously was to omit the balcony. Another comment was to simplify the secondary facade behind the ruin. And then also to look at the exterior materials to ensure that they are differentiated but harmonized with the existing. And you can see here that we have actually changed the materiality of the building. We were proposing a metal siding before, and now we're proposing a more like a boral channel gap siding. We have gone from a gable roof to a flat roof. And next slide, please. And here you can see the south facade, which was, I think, the portion of the building that had the most conjecture. I think one of the really nice comments we had from, I think it was from Aaron Manigan at the Preservation Society, was talking about the kind of wonderful nature of asymmetry that the existing structure had. And so we've started to think about that asymmetry and looking at a rhythm down the side of the building that approximates something that was more similar to that existing structure. So what you see here is as you move from the west side of the building, which is the back of the building, up, you have a wrap of a CMU wall, once again, ground face that we had a discussion about last time. And then as you start to move closer to the building, that plane steps back and you have a boral channel gap that emerges and wraps around the building. And then these elements that punctuate the side of the building are actually on the CMU part of the building. They are recessed, and they're an aluminum storefront system, or it's actually an aluminum panel system with an aluminum window inside of it, with a aluminum window shroud around it. And then as you move closer to the front of the building, you start to see a bay system that punctuates the facade there as well. And as at the top, you see that small little element that allows access to the roof. Next slide, please. And this is the side, the polite side of the building that actually backs up to the buildings that front Wentworth Street. You do see some glass brick there at the stairwell to give a little bit of light, and one window which actually looks out over the shorter building that aligns in front of along St. Philip Street and over Wentworth. Next slide, please. And here's an image that shows that structure. We're cantilevering the roof over in the front to provide a little bit of protection, but the idea is that to allow the structure to leave that ruin almost sacred, with the exception of just the reinforcement to stabilize the walls there. And you can see that bay system as it steps down the south facade here. Next slide, please. All right, can you back up one, please? There you go. Once again, this is another shot of that south facade, looking more directly onto it. And then you can see below the image of the north facade, where that one little window looks out over the shorter building. And then you see a perspective of that structure as it frames that implied courtyard behind the ruin. And then you see a roof shot, just understanding the geometry and the way that building relates to the ruin itself. Next slide, please. And so when we talk about materiality, one of the things that we discussed at the last meeting was that the board was willing to consider the ground face CMU if the quality of the material was right. And so we're still proposing that. We are proposing, as you can see up at the top left, a boral channel gap siding with a mitered corner. And then the the standing seam siding would happen at that rooftop element. And you can see also this image on the top right corner is what we call a window shroud, which is that element that protects the window itself. And then that lower left image is of a grouping of windows, similar to the type of approach we'd like to take with the windows themselves. Does anybody have any questions?
My board members, how many fellow board members, how many questions of the applicant?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay. All right, I'll open it up for public comment.
We do have public comment on this one, and I believe we have Ms. Anna Catherine Carroll.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. This is a very special site, and throughout the design review process, we have been supportive of the approach to retain this historic ruin to honor its history. It's really critical to get the associated new construction right, and while we feel this most recent proposal represents an improvement from the previous, we do have a few outstanding concerns. We appreciate the increased verticality of the fenestration and think the rear projecting frames in particular are interesting. However, we would encourage a simplified approach to the fenestration overall, and specifically feel the large square window on the east is not compatible or suitable for the front elevation. Similarly, given this is a relatively small scale building, we think that a more unified, authentic material palette would provide a more successful backdrop for the historic ruin. We are also struggling with the shape of the revised flat roof with a central pop-up, which we feel appears starker in comparison to the previous sloped roof structure. So we would just encourage continued study to soften its appearance. And then lastly, in keeping with comments we've made at every review of every version of this project, we are still concerned by the proposal to modify the ruined central ground floor window into a door. Given there is so little historic fabric remaining, we feel it is critical to preserve the existing form and ask for study of alternate side entry options. So we would recommend deferral in keeping with the extent of the restudy we feel is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
That concludes the public portion.
Thank you, Tori. City staff comments and recommendation, please.
To remind you guys of the previous staff comment, the previous motion was deferral for general architectural direction with staff comments 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Essentially everything but number 4. This proposal, the previous, was similar to a previous design, in which none of the current staff members were present. We have some comments on the new design and a few concerns, and feel that a refinement of overall design is needed. Omit the balcony on the front as it erodes the interstitial space between the existing facade and the new building portion. While these portions are very different from each other in style and material, this space seems sacred to the design. Secondary facade, new construction should be as clean and elegant as possible to essentially fade behind the remnant wall. The proposed exterior material of CMU and metal siding, while differentiated from, don't harmonize with the existing stage facade. Confirm how these materials will complement the salvaged facade from being that the proposed architectural style is already differentiated. While we would like to discourage any alteration of the wall and ideally not to break it, an entrance on the side or having a loop around it will eliminate the only function it can provide, which is to be an outdoor foyer. Breaking the roof eave with massive windows extenuates the 3rd floor and should be restudied. Confirm the depth of the plane change between the outside face of CMU block and the metal siding, as well as the recess of windows in CMU. As these dimensions are critical of the design intent, it is important to have as much of the depth of the exterior envelope expressed. The previous design had an unbalanced rhythm to the stucco openings that retained the spirit of the irregular remnant. The new design seems incredibly symmetrical and rich and should be more holistically related to the remnant wall. The eave line, as proposed, extends the property line, and so it is required to be reduced. The treatment of the remnant walls should be stucco parge coat and not metal coping. And the previous staff recommendation was deferral for general architectural direction with staff comments noted. Staff observation, the removal of the balcony element was appreciated. Staff comments. Per the National Trust of Preservation Brief number 14, which is regard to new exterior additions to historic building preservation concerns, which deals with new additions and adjacent or related new construction, and discusses the focus on new additions is to ensure that they preserve the character of historic buildings. And conversely, that the treatment of the addition should not be so different that it becomes the primary focus. Well, this project is essentially new construction. New construction and the historic facade relate due to the physical connection between them. Now, the revised design is clean and simple, settling appropriately behind and within the framework of the existing structure. Two exterior patterns harmonize with each other and reflect the interior division. However, the board should deliberate whether these, including the bay and hooded window elements, complement the historic structure. The extended overhang at the front portion helps to embrace the original safe structure. The window at the third floor facing St. Philip Street is square, and this is atypical for Charleston proportions and is contradicted in our policy statement regarding Charleston standards, which calls for more vertical proportions. Additionally, it does not align with the center glazing pattern beneath it and the center and first floor. The window can be a focal element, but it should be revised in size and shape and considered for harmonizing with the historic structure. The roof element access has been determined to be compliant with zoning. Staff did have some initial concerns. The glass, brick, or block on the north elevation should be further described for the preliminary submittal. It is critical that the plane change between the split face CMU and the channel gap siding be maintained, as this reflects the relationship with the existing historic structure. Staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with staff comment.
Thank you, Frankie. Does the applicant have any response to public or city staff comments?
Well, I think one of the things that was repeated was the square window, and we spent a lot of time studying that and would be happy to reconsider it again. I think our intent was to make that plane simple, once again, to kind of defer to the ruin in front of it. But the only intent there is to get a lot of light into the building and also to be able to see the interior of the ruin from the inside of the building. So the shape of the window can certainly be restudied. And I would ask the board just to, I thought it was interesting, the comment about softening the roof element. And I believe that was in reference to the eave that Anna Catherine mentioned. I think that when we talk about a building differentiating from an existing historic building and harmonizing with it, is kind of tough to differentiate and make it simple, which is what our intent is, and still think about that not being a harmonizing, you know. I mean, I think we always think of simplifying and deferring to the existing structure as the way to promote harmony. So I'd be interested to hear what the board had to say about that.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley. I'll turn it over now for board discussion and vote.
Fillmore here. I have a request to staff. Could you, on the staff comments, could you scroll back to staff to comment 1? Under staff comments. I assume that is a revised copy, because in the printed copy of staff comments that I have, at the end of that comment, there's an all caps only. And I see that it's not there. So I'm a little confused from my copy to this about what that comment, what staff intended by that comment.
Gilmore, that was probably a note that I put on there when Frankie and I were going back and forth with comments. I know I put that on there, and it was a note to kind of myself and to Frankie about, is the physical connection the only connection or not?
Right. I'm just a little confused whether staff was saying that the current design does relate or only relates in the physical connection. And so as it is currently omitted, I will assume that staff's comment means that the current design does relate to the historic structure. Is that a correct assumption?
I would say that it relates in that there is a physical connection, that being that the structural elements, and that it relates in that the new sits within the framework of the front existing structure. Those are the two ways I would say that it relates.
Okay, thank you.
To determine if that's enough.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Frankie, could I trouble you to put maybe that the photo or the portion that has the building on it, or the four views of the building on it? Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, and I'll appreciate comments obviously from Fillmore and Bill and board members who may have seen this a couple different times. I know it's gone through, and I haven't seen it as a board member in any of these iterations, but clearly an extremely challenging site and project by virtue of the ruin and location and whatnot. And I think it's been very well handled, and looking at, from what I've seen of previous comments to what's been done presently, would only agree with that even more. I do think, and I understand Ms. Jennings' struggle with the window at the front, but I think, in agreeing with the majority of how staff has framed this, the one thing that just that I find that would need maybe further development is, or just restudy, is that window on the upper level, the square. And I know it's something that perspective wise you may not see, but it might be nice to see if there's another option there that addresses that a little better. But all the points that Ms. Jennings said relating from the building inside out, and the ability to see that ruin and appreciate it not only from the exterior but from the interior, I think are wise. And she may in fact come back and say that that's still the best solution. But I think it's very well done, and would agree with most of the staff comments there, and we can enumerate as we move to a motion.
This is Bill. I'll go ahead and chime in. And actually, I do maybe have a question of Ashley. Well, one thing you stated during your presentation, I believe, was that the structure of support for the ruin is still being engineered, I guess. I just want to make sure that maybe whatever has a final approval is actually the real proposed structure. Did I hear that right, Ashley?
That's correct. I mean, we know that there's going to have to be some sort of shoring within that framework to stabilize it.
Mhm.
And we think that that's going to be a really fun part of the project to design. But I think we're going to have to get a little bit further along in the design to understand exactly how it interacts with the building itself and with the ruin.
Okay. And then one other quick, I guess I should ask this during question. There is rooftop access, and I do see here on this aerial down in the lower right image that we're seeing, is that the appearance of a pseudo parapet? Is that a decking system on the roof with a parapet? So we're not seeing any railings or anything like that. Is that what?
That's correct. So that plane steps down behind the parapet. So what you have on the parapet is for lack of a better description, an exaggerated cornice that actually serves as a roof, as partial roof over the area that's the front courtyard. And so there won't be any rail system or anything up there. The decking is actually below, down below. It sinks down within it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, and I would say, well, Eddie, for what it's worth, this is a brand new design for us too. So.
Oh, okay, all right. Sorry, I didn't know if y'all seen it before.
I kind of knew as well, but I do appreciate your comments. I do agree with your comments about the fenestration, especially, and again, I'm still open to use of this this block material. I really would like to say maybe some form of a sample. And I know it's potentially a little bit early to require or request a sample panel, but I know with the materiality of this solution right here is very critical. And I would like to at least see some semblance of some material representations via sample. But that's all my comments.
Phil Moore here. Bill, I agree with you. The note is it's a ground face block, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not terribly familiar with it. I know it's not split face, but I'm not quite sure what it looks like. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that some material samples would be really helpful. I absolutely agree with the window on the front, the big square window. I think it needs adjustment. I will say that I tend to disagree with staff on the idea that this building relates to the historic structure. I find that very architecturally very difficult to get in my head. However, that said, this is a new construction, and I think this is a very interesting building. And I think considering how difficult this is in width and sort of mass, I think this building does a good job of trying not to overwhelm that little remnant. And I think it's a very interesting and thoughtful design on its own merits, independent of the remnant. And I think it's very difficult to make this building relate to the remnant, but I certainly do not oppose the design even in this setting.
Well said. I think that's good. And I'll just hop on that one last point and let us move forward. But you're exactly right. I know that per the Secretary standards, there is a phrase that says that, and I don't think we need to struggle to say that it relates to it because it's very different from it. And I think the remnant is more valuable in appearance by virtue of the design rather than something that's trying to, approximate an older structure. So I exactly what Senator said.
Does anybody want to entertain a motion?
I want to
Floor-
just interject one thing.
Go ahead,
I
Tori.
know that the discussion about materials is at the preliminary phase. And so if there is a comment that's included into this motion about materials, I want it to be clear for the record that it is the materiality is critical to the architectural design, if I may. Thanks.
Thank you, Tori. Anyone have a motion?
Eddie, do you want to go for the motion or?
Yes, sir. I'll take a stab at it. I'll make a motion for conceptual approval with board comments, staff's comment that acknowledged, and I think even the applicant agrees that the materiality is important. And if there is a way, either by photographs or samples, that as it moves to the next phase, that the board could be shown what the texture and character of this, the ground place block would be, I think that would serve everybody well moving forward. So again, a motion for conceptual approval based on more detail related to the ground place block, a restudy of the window facing the street above the ruin. And again, I think most of staff comments are very positive with relating to it. So those, I don't see any reason that those couldn't be part of the motion as well. I'm included.
I'll make sure I got this right. A motion for conceptual approval with staff's comments and board comments to provide a material sample of the, well, we could just say the exterior cladding material. And a physical sample, you mentioned photographs or a physical sample. Is there, I personally would prefer a physical sample. I don't know if we could.
I mean, if that's doable at this phase, I have no problem with that. I don't know if it's day of
Okay,
Zoom and all
so,
that.
so it'd say that as a physical sample.
Yes, sir.
Of that material. And was there anything else? Did I get it all? Restudy the fenestration, the physical
Yeah,
sample of
the
the
front window, and
cladding
that's
material
in the staff comments too. So that's fine. Yes, sir.
and staff comments. Is there a second? Or do you want to, did I say that? Is it clear enough? I guess I want to make sure it's conceptual approval with staff's comments and board's comments to restudy the fenestration and to provide material samples of the exterior cladding material.
I think the restudy of penetration, was it just limited to that square window on the front, or was that a more general comment?
I was focusing more on the square window in the front.
Okay, thank you. I agree. Okay.
Thank you. So we say restudy the fenestration, meaning the square window at the front, and
Yes, sir.
provide physical material samples. So those are the two board comments. Is there a second?
Fillmore, I'll second.
Okay, second from Fillmore. Go ahead and call a vote. Eddie Fava,
I in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
and the chair votes yay in favor as well. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
We'll call Eddie Bello back in. Make sure he's back with us.
He's back.
He's back?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, item number 6 is number 56 Morris Street.
Okay, 56 Moore Street is requesting conceptual review of alterations to historic structure and the addition of a second story. This is the location at the corner of Felix Street and Morris Street. The existing site. Looking down Morris Street. And looking down Felix. We've got a couple Sanborn maps. Originally, this building was 2 separate units, and then it was later combined by 1955. And I'm going to turn it over to the applicant.
And with this one, we have Mr. Luke Jarrett, and he is in the meeting.
Mr. Jarrett, are you on mute?
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No problem. No problem.
I think I'm here now.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Excellent. Hello, y'all. I'm excited to be here to talk about this project and tell you a little bit more about it. This is it's a really fascinating and unique little building, and you know, a big challenge was to come up with a concept and a design that we felt would be you know, respectful of a building that has a lot of significance to the neighborhood, to the city, et cetera. And so I'll be presenting that to the design for you today as we look for conceptual approval for this thing. If you go in our presentation, please, to the 3rd page. And I'll give you all a brief little primer. This building, you can see it just past the sign on the left that says Brooks Motel. And then you can see it in the upper right-hand photograph. It's immediately to the far right of the screen. This building it's a single-story concrete block structure. It was built in the 40s by a local business person. And you know, and it's since it was up, it was supporting a very vibrant and interesting neighborhood, you know, along Morris Street. Morris Street has a really important connection to Charleston's history in that it was a cultural center for a large Black population in Charleston at a time when this city was really difficult, you know, for that population. And so Morris Street was a real hub for the community. The building was originally constructed to house a veterans association. Then it was, as Frankie mentioned, subdivided. There was a restaurant in one side. There was a pool hall. There was a real estate office. The restaurant itself was called the Brooks Cafe. It served the Brooks Motel, which it was across Felix Street, which has been demolished. And this restaurant was one of the very few places in Charleston that were listed in the Green Book. There were people traveling through that were not allowed to eat in our other restaurants. That they could come here. So this building is very, very culturally significant. It's interesting though, in that its architecture is very, very simple. So this is a structure that has a lot of value in terms of what it means, what it did, and but at the same time, the architectural character and those type of elements, very, very simple, very straightforward, and clean, simple little building. Our program for this project was to do an adaptive reuse to the ground floor of the structure, to reestablish a potential cafe use for the neighborhood, and then to provide office space for the building's owner. The size of space of the program, it required us to look at doing a second floor addition. So we found ourselves in a situation where we've got an existing historic structure. It's very simple. So we worked really hard to try to come in with a design that was going to be clearly differentiated, respectful, and that kind of stood back in a way that would allow the ground floor structure to continue once we've gone through and repaired it, fixed it up, to really still be the front and the face of this site. So if we could advance, let's see, I believe this is maybe 2 more slides. That's perfect. Okay, so here's a photo of the building right now. It had storefront window systems. There's 2 entrances on the ground floor on Morris Street, one on either end, 2 windows between them, another window on the side of the building. There's small windows at the rear of the structure. It's a low slope roof that slopes to the right in this image. It's a parapet around the front, a parapet along the Felix Street side, and then a kind of a cool little stepped parapet on the back of the site. So, those really are the kind of character defining elements of these buildings, these simple openings, the roof edge, and I guess the materials. So if we would roll down one more slide, please. We can keep going until we get to the renderings. I'd like to talk about them.
Here's some
Probably the best way to do this. Excellent. Next one, please. Okay. So we're proposing to come in here with a partial second story addition. The first floor is about 1,400 square feet. We'd like to do an addition of about 1,100 square feet on the second floor. That's conditioned. First and foremost, the construction, the structure will be supported from inside of this building. The building itself inside is in a terrible state of disrepair. So we expect that we will be redoing the slab and the foundations and coming up through there with new structural system to carry this second floor. So we won't be physically bearing on these walls. So we'd like to recess the building edges to the inside of the CMU parapet so that there's a very, very clean break between what's there and what we're coming back with. And we felt that a very, very simple building form was appropriate here. We're in a situation where we're working with with a historic structure. We're going to be operating in one way, but also this is a corner store location, commercial zoning in downtown Charleston, and a 2-story structure is very, very appropriate for a site like this. So we came in with something that was going to match in massing and with some similar exterior elements to some of our adjacent neighbors, primarily parapet gable screens or rakes end screens and parapet edges. So we got a really simple little overhang along the front of the building. It reduces in depth as it runs down the side. And we'd like to use a different material under there for the soffit. You can also see that we've baffled the side closest to our neighbor also, to give a little bit of privacy in both directions there. The proposed design has a parapet on 3 sides. If you wouldn't mind flipping forward maybe to the slide where we can look down from above, There we go. So you can see it's a pretty simple roof, low slope, sloping the same direction as the original roof does. You know, we wanted to keep this thing really secondary. We have it set back on all sides, but it's pulled back, you know, in the front a good distance, because again, you know, Morris Street is a pretty narrow right of way. So, you know, just about anywhere that you could possibly stand, this first floor building is going to be more prominent than the, you know, this addition up top will be. And we feel like it really kind of backdrops and highlights that ground floor building. As far as materials are concerned, what we're looking at doing is kind of trying to contrast a little bit the you know, the smooth masonry finish below. We're proposing to use a Shishugibond finished wood panel, or sorry, wood system in a shiplap, so that we can have a, you know, a human scaled softer element that's, you know, makes a lot of sense and is used in a lot of areas in downtown Charleston, but with a finish that, you know, clearly differentiates it as something that is new, is not trying to emulate this other construction. And I think it really kind of also kind of magnifies the building below with the color, with the texture, and the way that the material, again, is evidently something that is not, you know, of the period of the original construction. Very nice and clean. Yeah, the rest of the design is very simple. We'd like to do some windows across the front with access to where we can use a little roof terrace in the front. There'll be some windows down this side. And then one modification we are proposing to make to the original building is we would like to have the entrance to the office space there in the back corner, again, to get it away from the front, the main Morris Street entrance. So that there would be a proposed storefront opening in the back wall there, where you would go into the first floor. This set of stairs would take you to the second floor. And then finally, I think we would like to use some awnings. We do have a really, really flat building, and it's important to protect some of these openings that will be used. We're envisioning that the primary door of the restaurant space will be the door in the foreground center. To the right, kind of behind the crepe myrtle tree, there was a full height door there, but we thought it'd be really cool to maybe put a service window in there. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic in this neighborhood, and we're envisioning this being sort of a neighborhood cafe. Maybe you can get a coffee, the window there. We'd like to put an awning over that one, and then an awning over the new opening we're proposing at the rear of the structure. Yeah, I think that really concludes my portion of the presentation. Actually, I'd like to point out we've worked pretty closely with the Canterbury Elliotburn Neighborhood Association. This project has been before them 3 times. Once in a very early concept, once before we took this to BZA to take care of our parking requirements, and then once more prior to this meeting, they voted to unanimously support us all 3 times. And we've met a lot of positive feedback from the neighbors and people around. Our office is just around the corner from here as well, so we're very excited about this one. But thank you very much for allowing me to come here and present this, and I'll be happy to hear any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do any board members have questions of the applicant? No questions. Okay. Is there any public comment for this application?
Yes, sir. There are 2 public speakers. We will start with Anna Catherine Carroll.
Thank you, Tori. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society has serious concerns with the proposal to so significantly alter this culturally important mid-century building. We appreciate the applicant's presentation that did acknowledge the significance of this building, specifically with regard to its long-term neighborhood serving use as the Brooks Restaurant and Realty Company, and its notable inclusion in the Green Book. To add to that, 56 Morris Street is one of the few remaining buildings once owned and operated by prominent businessmen Benjamin and Albert Brooks on and around Morris Street. 56 Morris also retains a high degree of its original architectural character, which until very recently included original Philip Simmons iron window grating. We are not sure how or why these significant pieces were removed, but it's our understanding that they have been stored for safekeeping, but these pieces should absolutely be reinstalled as part of this project, which is not shown here, and we do have plenty of photographic evidence to support that. While we are supportive of rehabilitating this building for adaptive use, the introduction of a second story to this historically one-story building would drastically alter its form and character. In general, modifications to historic portions of the building should be limited to retain as much integrity as possible. And in that vein, we are concerned by the amount of fabric impacted by the proposed storefront at the rear. Like many of the peninsula's predominantly African-American neighborhoods, Moore Street in particular has suffered significant loss of historic buildings over time and is one of the last small-scale commercial buildings on this streetscape now dominated by new construction. 56 Moore Street demands a much lighter touch. We ask the board deny this proposal for restudy of a more sensitive approach to rehabilitation. We thank you for considering our position, and I should have noted at the beginning, we do appreciate the applicant reaching out to us on this project.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
And the next public comment will be from Miss Jean Murphy. Or Mr. Sorry.
Mr. Murphy, are you on mute or are you with us?
Hello.
Hello. Yes. Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jean Brooks Murphy. I'm the daughter of Benjamin Brooks. My family has been in business in downtown Charleston for over 80 years. We ran several businesses in Charleston since the early 1920s. The building at 56 Morris Street was purchased by my family in 1943. We've had the building for over 79 years. We also owned 50 Morris Street, 52 Morris Street, 54 Morris Street, 56 Morris Street, 60 Morris Street, 59 Morris Street, and 57 Morris Street. Our family's business was very intricate part of the African-American business in Charleston. As the gentleman said early, we were listed in the Green Book as maybe one of a few places that African-Americans could eat and live. In 1963, we opened Brooks Motel, which has been called the largest motel Black-owned in South Carolina at the time. So I like to make sure that we know that this is Brooks 56. And he said a couple of things incorrectly there. 56 Morris was purchased in 1943 after we moved from 51 State Street, which was Brooks Grill on the corner of State and Cumberland. We also had businesses at 47 Calhoun. So our family and their business structure was really very, very vital to the economy of Charleston. When the 56 stayed as a restaurant until the early 60s, when we built a new restaurant across the street. It was at 59 Morris. Then we turned the restaurant 56 Morris into a real estate office. We also, the pool room has never been a part of 56 Morris Street. It was 52 Morris Street. My family and I are opposed to the building being changed in any way. We would like to see it remain as a monument and a reminder of Black businesses and African-American businesses that blossomed in downtown Charleston in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. We also, if you take around Felix Street, we owned a couple of those at number 9 and number 4 in Felix. But I think that there should be, that building should just be a reminder that Black businesses were on that corridor. So I would like it to remain the same. I thank you for your time and for listening.
Thank you. Any more public comment, Tori?
That concludes the public comment. Thanks.
Thank you. Staff, city
We
staff
did have
comments and
one
recommendations.
one written comment submitted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did the board have a chance to read it? Well,
I
we
did
sent it
not.
out,
So can you read
yesterday.
that in? I'm sorry, Frankie.
Not a problem. I can read it. The written comment was from Brittany Lavelle Tula. She writes, I am opposed to the proposed alteration of number 56 Mars Street. The changes are insensitive and inappropriate for a structure of such historic significance. Constructed in the late 1940s as the headquarters for the statewide civil rights group, the Veterans Civic Organization, who worked to gain full rights for Black World War II veterans, and later became Brooks Grill, listed in the Green Book as a safe place for Black residents and visitors to eat. Number 56 Morris Street is one of the most significant buildings on Morris Street and was essential to the development of Charleston's overall civil rights movement. It survives as one of the last few remaining structures in the city that once served as a Green Book business, and with the loss of several structures at this very corner, the best representative example of Morris Street's role as a thriving economic and cultural corridor for Charleston's Black community in the 20th century. Maintaining its original footprint, scale, and design, the building is likely eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. The proposed alterations, however, would destroy any and all historic integrity and the ability of one of the city's most significant civil rights era structures to convey such a significant story. We cannot afford that. And that was the end of the written statement.
Thank you, Frankie, for reading that in. That'll be the end of public comment. We'll move on to city staff comments and recommendation.
Staff comments. While it is unusual to see an addition over an existing building, the proposed new portion contrasts with the existing building in material, texture, and color, and is recessed. Architecturally, it harmonizes in style with the existing. While the dark shade of the, I am going to butcher this, I apologize, Shoshuban cladding complements the dark anodized aluminum proposed for the storefront elements. It may feel overwhelming and heavy. This is mitigated at the Morris Street elevation because it is recessed considerably and lightened with a large portion of glazing. However, at the Felix Street facade, glazing is only applied for about half the span of the new addition. Board should deliberate on the color and visual weight of the proposed Shoshuban material and its subordination to the existing. The Shoshuban is yet to be widely used in Charleston. It is a durable material. However, the char can fade with water and UV exposure. Proper maintenance and oiling are required to maintain a consistent appearance, especially where wall portions receiving inconsistent weathering due to eaves and overhang. The proposed simple awnings coordinate with the design, sufficiently focus on the access points, and do not distract from the building. The Felix Street entry is a new entry and removes its historic fabric. Its design causes it to be more prominent than the existing entries on Moore Street, the one to remain and the one to be altered into a service window. The building was once split north-south instead of east-west, and we recommend minimizing the Felix Street entrance in favor of the historic opening. Awning or overhang element at the second floor is very thick and has a heavy appearance. The height should be reduced. This building was listed in the Green Book as a safe place for African Americans prior to the Civil Rights Movement, so additional care should be taken so as not to detract from this original building. Staff recommendation is for deferral for restudy to lighten the second floor visually.
Thank you, Frankie. Does the applicant have any response to public or city staff comments?
I would say, yeah, we're of the position that that the proposed design does not cause the integrity of the existing structure to be compromised. I think it's challenging to try to to do a project like this, but we really have worked very hard to create something that we feel is respectful and sensitive to that. With respect to the city's comments about some of the colors and finishes, etc., we'd be very happy to continue to work towards coming up with something, refining the design as we move through into this one here. But we do feel that the height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction is appropriate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll now move into board discussion and vote.
I'll start off then. Fillmore here. I think I am more in line with the comments of Historic Charleston Foundation. At this point, I think that this building is very significant, and particularly to that neighborhood. They're very few representations, commercial representations of African American business success left in this part of Charleston, and I think this building is very significant for that. So I think that whatever is done to it has to be done very sensitively. I do think that the general architectural direction of the second story is reasonably compatible with the existing building, but I think it is overwhelming. I think that the Felix Street perspective in the drawings demonstrates this visually pretty well. And so I think it does not meet, in my eyes, does not meet height, scale, and mass requirements. I think it overwhelms this very simple and very attractive small commercial building.
Well, I'll let me chime in a little bit. I know the building pretty well. I used to work next to it. I remember the Brooks Motel. And I really appreciate Ms. Brooks. I could tell the passion in her voice. She knows this neighborhood better than anybody. I'm a block from the building right now. But I will say, and I've seen it sit vacant for as long as I can remember, a good 20-something years that I can recall. So, I struggle with this because I can tell also that the architect, in my mind, has done a great job. They've spent a lot of time considering the design. These materials that they're proposing are not inexpensive. They're not asking for hardy plank and it's a fairly, other than not doing anything at all, which I think is what Ms. Brooks would like, and respectfully, I understand that. The preservation groups would like nothing to happen at all as well, but I think that's a little bit unrealistic. In my mind, that the owners have a right to do something with it, and in my mind, height, scale, and mass is appropriate to have a second story there. This is just a very difficult application to me. I can easily see in their design where the historic building starts and stops. And, I guess we could argue about whether, some openings could be lessened or something to access the building. But the reality is, if this building is going to be used, something needs to be done to it. It can't just sit there like it has been since, again, as long as I've known. So I'm struggling with it. I have to admit, I did not know all of this rich history about it until just now. I knew the history of the Brooks Motel and those buildings around, but I did not know that particular building. But I'm struggling with the fact that you can't do anything to it because then I don't want it to sit there for another 20 years. I mean, it's a simple little building. I don't want to see it fall down, so I don't know. I guess I'd like to hear maybe from the other couple of board members, but I'm struggling with saying nothing can ever happen to this building. To me, if I'm as an architect and someone who appreciates the history of that building, if I'm asked to do a design, I would do something fairly similar. This to me is very secondary. Height is not an issue here. You can clearly read where the historic building starts and stops. It seems sensitive to me. Now, again, maybe the issue of the material is too heavy for some, but I don't know. Anyway, I'll be quiet and let the other board members chime in.
Well, I'm scrolling through on my computer screen adjacent. So if y'all see me looking away, that's what it is, looking at the drawings. But I will, again, an enormous amount of respect for those that presented the more in detail history of the property and whatnot, and do think it is a building that should be celebrated. And I think then we're charged with how is that celebrated, and it may be just a presentation thing, but the aerial perspective, just in my opinion, maybe a little deceiving because you're up so high looking down at this, and it looks, yes, like the second level is overwhelming and whatnot. But as you look at some of the elevations and walking around at the pedestrian level or as a passerby, I think what happens above is almost an anonymous element, and the thing that you really are aware of and are drawn to or the existing structure, and what happens above is slight, if I may say, because it's a layer on top of what's there, but recess is not only by virtue of its color, but physically as it does from the front elevation. I certainly understand this is an incredibly difficult project, but to be able to breathe new life into this important site and respect what is there, and as Mr. Bello referenced, so many of these structures we've seen over the years that people aren't able to do anything with them, or they've sat and fallen in, and to have somebody that's able to take this on and work with the existing building. I think my only initial comment would be just, I know there's a recess from Morris Street. I don't know if there's ability to recess some from the other side, but I feel like the aerial perspective, although informative, may be a little bit deceiving in that it makes maybe more of what's happening on that second level an issue than it may be in reality. Yeah, it's a difficult project, but I thought it was a very thoughtful and considered design.
Can I ask that staff show the rendering instead of the staff comments?
Yeah.
Of the perspective from Morris Street? I think it'd be helpful.
That's what I'm looking at.
And I'm looking at it too, but it's just
Yeah.
hard for us to talk when we don't see a picture.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Eddie. I just.
No. That's fine. I was, like I said, I keep looking away, but that's what I'm looking at on my screen. So
That's
the elevation you want?
No, there's a perspective from Morris Street, I think, that probably illustrates that, not that one, the next one. That back. No, it's the corner of Morris and Felix.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
That one. I just think that really describes the design the best to me. So I just think it's helpful.
I agree. I mean, I feel again like what's happening above is, I assume was intended that it reads as more anonymous, and it's subordinate to some of the other structure around it, and definitely defers respectfully to the building below, and that is walking by, short of being down the street or the other side. I don't know that you'd much realize the height of what's up there.
I think one thing that's kind of interesting to me, and again, this is such a sensitive topic, in many instances, this building someone would be asking to demolish it. I'm not saying that should happen at all. I'm just saying, it's interesting that we're mostly concerned about, reusing it some way and adding on to it. And, we see a lot of buildings that are fairly humble buildings like this one that, people just assume we can tear them down. So I guess I'm trying to look at the bright side here. It's clearly you can see the existing building being retained in the design. So.
Hey, yeah, this is Bill. I'll go ahead and chime in. I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made, especially I believe that the second story element should be as subordinate as possible. And I would believe that maybe at least definitely the sides that are at the street should be pushed back a pretty good bit. I think potentially engaging a back corner or something like that might be a different animal, but I think it's pretty important that the addition be subordinate to the point where the original form of the building in its entirety reads as a parapet completely around. And I think the other sort of point of fact is there definitely needs to be an acknowledgement of the history of this building. I don't know how that, again, could come to fruition, but it does need to be. But I think it is one thing, and Eddie, to a point you made about the building kind of being empty for a while, I think that's one sort of testament to a building, as well as the fact that it's being used. And with the opportunity of use would be an opportunity for visitors to this building to learn the history of the building, if there's a way that can be, put forward. So I believe that's pretty much my position on it. I just think that Eddie Fava made the point too about potentially subordinating these walls as much as possible. That would be my point as well.
Thanks, Bill. Fillmore here. Eddie, I wasn't suggesting that you couldn't do something to the top of this building in any way. I think that architecturally, what's been done here is trying to be sensitive, and I think it does reflect the architectural character of the existing building. I think that the mass reads as too great and dominating over this really sort of nice pedestrian small structure. And what Bill said was exactly what was in my mind, and that is that I think that this structure simply needs to be pulled off of the Felix Street side to some extent, so that from the street perspective, it does become less imposing, and and lets the original building have a little more dominance. I'm not in any way suggesting that you can't do something to this building. And I think that the architectural direction of this is very nice. I just think it needs to be rethought in its mass and its relation to the exterior elevations of the existing building.
Okay, we're working towards a motion, someone?
Well, I'll throw out a motion. I don't know if it's going to be seconded or not, but I would move for conceptual approval with the condition that the wall, what is that? The west facade wall, the Felix Street side, be pushed back from the historic building to be more recessive from the historic building. Again, I don't think it needs to be deferred for that. I think that can just be a condition. And then restudy of the openings to lessen their impact, and then to consider somehow incorporating, I don't know how you do this, historic, I'll just leave that alone. So I would say conceptual approval with the condition of shifting the Felix Street facade back further to lessen its impact, and then to restudy the overall impact of the openings.
Okay, so there's a motion from Eddie for conceptual approval with board and no staff comments in that, Eddie.
Sorry, I don't have this. I lost my staff comments now. Sorry.
Okay.
Not very, this is why I shouldn't make motions.
Okay.
I think I was agreeing with most staff stuff. Yeah, I think I also agree with the overhang up top could be thinner. Okay, staff comments are fine. I mean, that's pretty much what I said.
Okay, so there's a motion. So you're stating
Yes.
staff. A motion from Eddie for conceptual approval with staff comments and board comments to remove the, or let's say, set back the Felix Street addition, second story addition facade back off of the parapet wall. We did not designate an amount. And also to re-study the fenestration. I didn't catch about the fenestration, Eddie.
Well, it's just what city staff said. Is there a way to lessen the opening?
Okay, to lessen the impact of the fenestration. Okay, and that was it. Those two comments. Is there a second?
Bill, I hate to bother you, or Eddie. Could you were saying that restudy of that Felix Street, that the second level would be recessed further. Is that correct?
Recessed.
Okay.
Although an amount of recess was not stipulated.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second. I'm going to call the vote. Eddie Bello.
Yay in favor.
Eddie Fava.
Yay in favor.
Fillmore.
Yay in favor.
And chair votes yay in favor. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm not
Moving
thinking.
on to agenda item number 7, 111 South Battery.
I have to recuse again on this one, y'all.
And please note,
I'm
Mr.
sending
Bello
you to
has
the waiting room.
recused.
Eddie Bello is in the waiting room. 111 South Battery is requesting demolition of elements as shown on drawings and requests preliminary approval of repairs to windows and front steps. And they're also requesting preliminary approval of a new masonry fence. Structure is not rated and built circa in 1921. It's in the Oldham Historic District. The aerial showing the location of the house, the front facade, another angle, looking east on South Battery and west. And these are a few Sanborn maps from 1902 and 1955. And I'm going to turn it over to the applicant.
All right, Miss Luda Subcheck is in the meeting.
Good evening. This is Julia Sobchuk with AGA Normoride Design. I'm representing our client and owner of this building, Sanju Patel. A little bit of the I guess journey how we got here with this application. We started a few months ago, actually in the summer of last year, and the elements for the demolition and redesign of this exterior of the building were very extensive. We met with Preservation Society, with Historic Charleston Foundation, with staff, and at the time, board members visited the property as well. And there were a lot of comments which we listened very attentively to it and took to the considerations, and we digressed with a lot of potential issues which we were facing. And we are now at the point that we're looking for a few areas of demolition and repairs. Mainly, it's the existing windows, which I counted 9 of them, 3 up front, I think 4 on the east side, and I think it's 1 on the north side. Also, there's the front steps, which seems to be original with nice style work on. And I'm sorry, Frankie, could you kind of keep moving with the yeah, we had extensive
page.
Yeah, I don't have anything in front of me, so just to the drawings and I mean to the photos. Yes, so this is a front steps, which actually sort of eliminating from the building and sagging. This area was filled in the beginning of the last century, and compaction was not as well as I guess we're doing now. And so it's actually surprising how long this steps survived so far, but it needs to be rebuilt. And what we are proposing is demolish existing one and totally replicate with the new one and be structurally sound. The other, like I said, can we move forward a little bit to show maybe? Yeah, keep going. Keep going. This is a report from our historic consultant. So this is one of the windows which we are going to try to repair, or if not repairable, replace with like the window we have in front of us. Please keep going. Yes, let's get to going. So this is the site plan and yeah, very quickly, site plan with, as you see, it's very tight property on the south, on the east side. We have a really narrow setback between the building and the new fence built by the owners of the adjacent property. And there is a steps there in niche, which we are proposing to remain as is, but we are adding the platform above the landing to place the condensers. It's not visible from the street, and there's a photos on this application which will show you that's absolutely hidden and not visible. So that gives us ability to hide those condensers. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see. Yes, that's a top left photograph. It's showing that setback and niche on the east side of the building. Let's keep going. This plan shows the areas of demolition. Besides the front steps, there's a rear steps which were it's a wooden structure, later addition for accessibility was it's not going to be used anymore with the new plan. So we are asking for demolition of that and enclosing a couple of the window and the door at the basement and to help with the it's kind of below the grade right now. Okay, next one, please. So this plan is a first floor level and shows the windows which we are asking for to look at as for repairs and replacement, possibly. Those are original windows. Window next to there's a double window next to the niche step is actually seems to be a later addition with enclosed area with siding, and we are asking to demolish that one. And we will see why is it happening on the new work which we will have on a following drawing. Next slide, please. And there's two more windows. I'm sorry, those windows are at the attic floor. They're not original, so we're asking for replacement of those, or if we are, but the design will be pretty much mimicking the same. Please, next, please. So those existing elevations, but also there's the noting what we're asking for the demolition as part of the windows and steps. Next, please. So you see on the bottom, there's the side elevation, east elevation, and that's what that double window I was referring to next to the niche, the steps, and later addition of the siding. And we are asking to demolish that window as well. Next, please. Those are just photographs showing different areas what we're working with. Next, please. Same here. Next, please. So this is starting with the proposed changes to the property, and again we're showing the enclosed on the website. We're showing enclosed excuse me, areas where we had a window and door into the basement, but we're also showing on the east side, I'm sorry, on the south side, the opening with the window and side lights to the basement. Next, please. Oh, I'm sorry, and along the south battery, we're showing the new masonry fence with the metal gates and pedestrian gates. Next, please. This plan depicts the windows we will be working with, and the doors, couple doors, one the front door and the door to the porch on the left side. Next, please. Same as on the upper level. Next, please. Our plan is just for information to understand this structure. Next, please. So this sheet that shows the repairs and notes for repairs of the windows and the front steps and adding the gate furthermore into the property, but also shows on the top elevation shows the masonry wall with the metal gates. Next, please. So same as for the side elevation, and shows the locations of the fence, and existing fence and the new fence along the south battery on the left hand side. Next, please. That's a rear elevation, which is south elevation, shows that window. I'm sorry, double door with the side lights, none of that visible from the street, and shows the recessed gate in. It's a privacy gate in the on the left hand side. Next, please. And this is east elevation. Again, the niche showing the platform of the landing and condensers, and also enclosure of the double window with matching wood siding going within that area. Next, please. And those are the details for the new fence, which we're proposing on the, along the south battery. That's pretty much concludes this application for us.
Okay, thank you.
Answer questions, if any.
Yes, do any board members have any questions of the applicant?
You, Mr. Huey, just quickly, Ms. Subchuk, can we look at the plan or just a reference plan, Frankie, if you don't mind? Just a clarification, just before we go into comments and deliberation of the items that are not visible from public right away, or I don't know if staff wants to weigh in on that, and Ms. Subchuk, you could say so.
Yes, that's probably the plan which we need to look at. And so on the south side, that's the double window. I'm sorry, the same window, double doors with the sidelights at the basement. kind of addressing the pigeon store a little bit or something kind of in that basement. It's pretty deep basement. And they have the rear property, which is the little of the exterior. And the niche on the east elevation, that's where will be the condensers, and you cannot see them at all from the any point. Anything else? You have a
I had someone walk up and ask me a question. And we did go out to the site and confirm the front stairs obviously are very visible, but the side niche it's very difficult to see.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
can see a little bit of this corner right here.
Right.
I think there was a good photo that showed it. I might be able to zoom in on. There. So I went and stood right at the
Nice.
edge of the sidewalk and looked back, and there's very little of that niche you can see.
Okay. And then similarly for the rear, Frankie, is that correct?
Sorry, I'm having trouble with my.
Sorry, I don't want to belabor it. I was just of things that are, or maybe what's better is what is visible or what falls under our purview. It's the front stair
front stair is here, yes,
and the windows.
and the windows, right?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
But it's all, you know, it's not going to be open. So
Yes, ma'am.
And
And
the
sorry, one
rear-
last question, because I know we're trying to move along, but Ms. Subject, when you said that the front stair is being demolished to be replaced, is that because it is settling or you anticipate it'll be settling?
no, it's settling.
It is settling. Okay, gotcha.
Yes,
Okay.
and we had a structural engineer to look at it.
Yes, ma'am.
There are some.
Okay.
It's dangerous right now.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more board questions? Okay. Move on into public comment.
Okay, we have two. We'll start with Anna Catherine Carroll.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society appreciates the applicant reaching out to us on this project and feel the current proposal is much improved. We're glad to see the porch and niche are no longer proposed to be enclosed and the windows are being evaluated for repair. As this project progresses, we would encourage completion of a detailed window schedule to ensure as many windows as possible are repaired, especially given that the house retains so many of its original windows. And in the vein of retaining as much historic material as possible, we are concerned with the proposal for wholesale reconstruction of the front steps and encourage limited intervention to avoid impacts to the tile landing that does date to the 1920s. There's also no detail to indicate the proposed replacement of the front door, whether or not it's warranted, which needs to be determined before a new design can be considered. What appears to be a large plate glass door shown on the current drawings is not appropriate. Lastly, the proposed 6-foot masonry site wall is too tall and out of character with the context that is predominantly comprised of low knee walls and iron fencing. Some form of wall may be appropriate, but if the concern is flooding, temporary flood barriers are becoming more prevalent. We would encourage the applicant to explore that option instead. Thank you.
And then we'll also have April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the request for conceptual approval for modifications at 111 South Battery. We appreciate the applicant taking the time to reach out to HCF. We believe that the applicant has responded to the BAR's comments and we respectfully recommend approval. Thank you.
And that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Tori. City staff comments and recommendations?
The proposal includes rebuilding stairs to match existing. We think that the cast stone and tile should be saved and restored. Visibility of the east side alcove is very minimal and staff is not concerned with the location of the mechanical equipment in the alcove. However, the mechanical's platform connection to the historic house should be addressed and this addition should be reversible. Existing windows should be repaired. Any windows requiring replacement shall match existing, keeping the patterns and profiles of the existing. A solid wall at the front of the property is not appropriate and out of context for the area. The majority of the properties on this street feature a knee wall with ironwork above, and per BAR policy, fences and walls should be appropriately scaled for their context so as to prevent a fortress-like appearance. This solid design would be incongruous with the streetscape and should be omitted from the proposal. In order to provide flood protection, the flood protection on the house should be incorporated, or flood panels should be incorporated similar to those at 5 East Battery. And if a solid wall is to be used, the upper portion should not be solid to prevent that fortress-like appearance. And I will also add that Ms. Subject did email me about the front door, and they are proposing a solid wooden door at this point, but it was the presentation had already been compiled. Staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with staff comment.
Thank you, Frankie. Does the applicant have any response to public or staff comments?
We appreciate thorough review of this project over this several months and help from every agency and including the staff. And we will be looking at all the comments closely again, and we'll try to remedy the answers and provide more detail. But thank you.
Thank you. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I would agree with staff comments, just cutting to the chase. The only thing that I do have a little bit of an issue with is respectfully 4 and 5, because I would maybe just temper it as a restudy of that wall. I feel like there are properties along South Battery in particular that have been granted walls, and I don't disagree that from an architectural standpoint, it's nicer when it's open. But 44, 46 South Battery, both of those had really handsome open fences, and they were able to get walls in front of theirs under the premise of flooding and whatnot. So I think to not be able to allow somebody at least to study that opportunity would not be fair. But keeping that in mind, I do think what's proposed is higher than what it would need to be. It would in fact be fortress-like. So if there's a way that it is lowered to some degree or mitigated at the upper level of it, that would be much more appropriate. But other than that, I agree with all the staff comments.
Phil Moore here. Eddie, I appreciate your concern with flooding. I know that we've struggled with this a lot, and I know everybody in Charleston and that has any connection to this has struggled with it a lot. And of course, I know the projects that you mentioned, and I think that from my perspective, I think early on when some of these applications were made for walls for flooding, there certainly was enough concern about it, and still is, that I think the board felt that it was inappropriate for us to sort of wholesale prevent people from protecting their property from flooding. And I certainly still hold that view. However, I have come to believe that there are better ways to do it than building barriers house by house. And so I'm in agreement with staff on this. That part along that street, I went down and took another look at it, because I go down it all the time, but I went down and took another look at it today. And virtually every house within several blocks of that house have a knee wall with iron fencing. And I think a solid wall there, sort of in almost any configuration, would be inappropriate. A knee wall, certainly with open fencing, I think would be fine, obviously very attractive. And I think with careful study, there would be ways to do that and incorporate flood panels that would provide a level of flood protection virtually as good as a solid wall. You might add additional posts with flood panel connections on the back and maybe a slightly higher knee wall, but still maintain that open ironwork fencing above. And so I don't think I would support just in general a solid wall across the front of this, but certainly some configuration of a wall that could provide, maintain the openness and still provide some flood protection. And everything else I think is fine, and I agree with staff on all the other comments.
And this is Bill. I'll go ahead and chime in. I agree really with I agree with staff's comments. I in a way agree with both board members' comments. I think to the point where Eddie was saying a wall should be lowered, and Fillmore talking about a knee wall height being appropriate in context to the neighborhood. I think I'm in agreement, and how high that is in between. It might be a knee wall. That's one thing about walking this street and kind of the experience of walking this area. As you mentioned, Fillmore, there are a lot of open, they're knee walls, but open above. You could basically enjoy the architecture. This building has a lot of pretty amazing things going on for it, and I would hate, in detail, I'd hate that experience to be lost as well. So I just think, to whatever degree, a lowering of a wall is a good idea. So that's all I had to add. Is there a motion from you guys?
I'll take a stab at it. I would move for conceptual approval with staff comments 1 through 3, and again, just a tempering of it, which hopefully is acceptable to fellow board members of the wall element, a restudy of that to lower, or in deference to fellow board members' comments, some substance of a knee wall in lieu of what's currently proposed.
And this would come back for preliminary, correct? It's not final to staff, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, so that was a motion for preliminary approval, correct? Preliminary approval was
conceptual.
I'm sorry. Was that conceptual approval?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. A motion for conceptual approval with staff's comments, except for comment number 4 to a board comment of amendment to say that some form of a wall in a lower height or a knee wall may be appropriate.
Yes, sir.
That's it. Okay. Do I have a second?
I would second it, but I would like to, I don't think staff comment number 4 is inappropriate. And I don't think it contradicts your motion, Eddie.
Well, I might.
Nor does 5, I think. And I would be a little more comfortable with staff's comments in there. Because in staff 5, it says if a solid wall is to be used, the upper portion should not be a solid to prevent it. So that leaves it open to a lot of options. It doesn't just say simply that it has to be an ironwork fence or something. That leaves it open. But it's there.
I might just let it die, and again, just more information than everybody needs, but we worked on the house right next door where it had approval for a solid wall. And I don't know if they decided to move forward or not. And right around the corner from South Battery, that very location, there are other solid walls that are perforated design or anything. So I felt like that if there are ways that could be done creatively if the architect wants to take that on, but if that's not, that's why I just left those out. So I'm happy to let that.
No, I mean, I agree, and that's why I don't think that, that staff's comments, exclude that possibility.
I agree. And Fillmore, I guess one point there too is the word solid design. And I guess, Eddie, you did just make a point of some of these taller walls actually have some degree of openness to them.
Yeah. I mean, they're pierced brick walls, and there's all kinds of configurations that leaves open to, to some, imaginative design and
okay. Is that
engineering?
Is that motion still alive, or do we need to reword something? I think maybe we just let that one go and then reword.
I
the new
agree.
motion.
Yes, sir.
Okay, do I have a new motion?
Fillmore, I'm going to let you do that because again, respect.
Okay, I know. I'm trying to do it so I don't completely eliminate what you would like to see in it. Step comes 1, 2, 3. I don't know. I'm struggling with how to do that and still not end up with because I think staff comment 5, leaves open, says a solid wall is to be used via proportion. It should not be solid. Or we could modify that to say, we could just change that, strike that comment and say if a solid wall is to be used, some effort should be made to provide a more open pattern to the solid wall. Would that meet your concerns, Eddie?
I guess I'm wondering then, is it a solid wall?
Right. Well, no, the whole problem is the word solid in there.
Yeah.
And I can't really second something that would leave a clear indication that you could build we would approve a solid wall there. And certainly I'm open to I think the big problem here is that they're only, because I don't think it's unusual for the chair to second a motion. I don't know if it's actually excluded, but I know it's generally not done.
I think you can make a motion that's acceptable to Mr. Faven.
Yeah. Eddie, you want to try it again?
I know everybody on the call is ready for us to move forward. My issue with it, just personally and professionally, is the house immediately next door was something we worked on a while back. And again, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but it was approved as a solid wall. And within a stone's throw, there's one that's a solid wall. Now the height was lowered, it was designed in a different fashion and all of those things. So I feel like it would be disingenuous or double standard for me to say that you could not do it.
I completely understand that.
And as you mentioned, it's not out of the ordinary. I mean, it can be done, as I think the chair could second, and Bill, if you say otherwise, and y'all could let it move. I don't want to be a thorn in anybody's side, but I think it's not appropriate for me to say they couldn't do something that was done similarly around the corner.
Yeah, right. I understand that. I'm fine with that. If Bill can second the motion, Eddie could make his motion. We could have a vote.
But I wouldn't change it from what I did. So, I mean,
That's
if you're
fine. Yeah, I understand completely.
then I guess that original motion stands, Bill, if you've still got it.
Eddie's motion is still on the floor, I think.
Okay, so Eddie, if I remember correctly, your motion was conceptual approval with staff's comments with the revision, if we will, of staff comment number 4 to reference a solid design may be appropriate, however, lower in height. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. I think a restudy of that wall, either lower in height or with a knee wall. And let them
Lower
come
in
back.
height or with a knee wall.
Yes, sir. One of those two alternatives maybe covers both bases.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor, and is there a second? Well, I will second it as well, you're going to go ahead procedurally. I think it is better if you're in agreement, Phil Fillmore, if you would second.
Yeah, I have no objection to you seconding the motion. But
okay. Well, then I'll second the motion. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And now I'll call the vote. Eddie Fava.
I'm in favor.
Fillmore.
Nay opposed.
And chair votes yay in favor. Motion passes. Thank you.
Sorry, guys, for the logistics there.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you
It's
very
those
much.
details. Thank you. It's those details that need to be looked at. It's a good thing. Okay, next is agenda item number 8, 55 Smith Street.
Okay, 55 Smith Street is requesting conceptual approval for modifications and expansion of piazza infill and simplification of non-original fenestration pattern. There's the aerial showing 55 Smith Street. This is the front of the house. Looking up and down Smith Street. And the 1902 and 1951 Sanborn maps. And with that, I will turn it over to Erin Lanier.
Good evening, board. Oh, I'm here. Okay. Good evening, board members. This is Erin Lanier with Julia Martin Architects here on behalf of the owners of 55 Smith Street, Bess and Lee Ferry. 55 Smith is the two-story circa 1895 Victorian residence you see here, and we are assisting the owners with interior renovations as well as select improvements to the exterior, including modifications and expansion of the existing porch infill. Next slide, please. These are some photos of the property located near the northwest corner of Smith and Montague Streets. The home has been well cared for and largely retains its original form. However, as you can see in the bottom photos here, there have been alterations to some of the fenestration patterns and several phases of porch infill over the years. I'll draw your attention in particular to the photo in the bottom left-hand corner, which shows the earliest area of infill there where you see the two transom windows. There's also a small section beyond that at the first floor, and then the larger infill probably added in the 80s or 90s at the second floor. Next slide, please. These are just some context photos, and number 55 is the teal structure that is one in from the corner. The only view of the work we're proposing will be looking down the driveway at the south elevation, but we've included the image at the top right, which is from Montague, just to clarify that there is no visibility of the areas in question from that direction. Next slide. This is a basic existing and proposed site layout, as well as some Sanborn maps. And what these tell us is that there were originally two large sections of two-story porch at the southwest corner of the home. The maps don't appear to have been updated over time as one would hope, but interior finishes suggest that the first infill occurred in the 30s or 40s, just behind the stair hall, to allow for bathrooms on both floors. As part of this project, we're looking to reduce the bathroom at the first floor so that we can add a proper laundry room and pantry just behind, effectively matching the footprint of the existing infill at the second floor. Next slide. In thinking about how to best achieve this new infill in a sensitive manner and make this portion of the house a little more cohesive, we've studied the notion of using louvered shutter type screening, which is of course found historically all over the peninsula. We like this solution in part because it works well with the asymmetrical nature of the column layout, but it also gives the impression of simply a privacy screen, which could be open behind, as opposed to a more obviously solid wall. So these are just a few examples of that concept, which we think work really nicely. Next slide. Moving to the floor plans, here is the first floor where we are relocating the kitchen and would like to add the laundry and pantry space. The laundry is currently stacked in a small closet in the back of the second floor, and the owners would really like to have more room for proper laundry and additional kitchen storage. As you can see, the infill is set back behind the columns and rail and reduces the bathroom footprint slightly so that it gets cleaned up at the exterior and better aligns with the second floor. Also at the first floor, we'll be removing a non-historic cellar access, which gets replaced with a hatch at grade. And then the large mechanical stand at the rear will go away so that we can add French doors and steps down to the garden. Next slide. Here at the second floor, we aren't making any changes to the footprint, but as you'll see in a moment, we'd like to reclad the existing infill and restore the porch railings, which were removed at some point in the past. I'll also draw your attention to one aspect of the existing conditions that's probably best seen here, and that's the way the two existing sections of infill progressively step back from the main exterior wall of the house. The first section where the small bathroom is steps back about 4 inches, and then the second section where the closets are proposed steps back another 9 inches from that. I point that out simply to explain why we're unable to unify the entire infill and elevation. As much as we'd like to push that bathroom wall in and continue the porch rail over, doing so would make that space too small to function as a full bath and would require ripping out a really charming 1940s fixtures and tile that we would like to preserve as part of the evolution of the interior of this house. Next slide. So moving to the elevations, here's the existing and proposed front and rear. We aren't making any changes at the front and the rear is not visible, but we're adding the new garden access, cleaning up the fenestration at the infill, and on the side, cladding it in, on this side, cladding it in a nickel gap siding to better differentiate from the original Dutch lap siding on the rest of the house. Next slide. So here is the south elevation where we're expanding the porch infill, but again, also really trying to clean it up and unify the fenestration. At the existing, we've highlighted in a blue-gray there the areas at both floors that are currently infilled. And it's a little deceiving, I know, because of where the porch floor appears to end. But in fact, the original porches encompass that area where the transom windows are as well. And then at the proposed, you can see the new louvered screening at both floors and the railing that gets added back at the second floor. We're also proposing new operable wood shutters at the windows towards the front. We're going to replace the plastic lattice at the foundation with new orthogonal wood lattice and remove the non-historic cellar access at the rear. We'll also eliminate some of the extra doors and windows that were added at various times and replace the mismatched doors with more historically accurate 1 light over 2 panel versions. Next slide, please. At the north elevation, the only modification is to replace that small window at the rear. Next slide. And I'll just end with a 3D study of what we believe the view of the infill will be down the driveway. While we certainly are sensitive to and generally try to avoid infilling historic porches, we feel like in this case, the impact to the street is minimal and the overall composition of the south elevation is improved by utilizing the traditional louvered screening to unify these previously altered spaces and allow them to more clearly read as original porches. That is all I have, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Erin. Do any board members have any questions? Okay, and also I forgot to ask, Eddie Bello is back with us, is that correct?
I'm here.
Okay,
Yep.
I don't have
Here you go.
everybody on my screen, so I couldn't tell. Okay, no questions, then we'll move on into public comment.
This one we have April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. Excuse me. HCF has reviewed the request for conceptual approval for modifications and expansions of an existing piazza infill and simplification of the non-original fenestration patterns. We thank the applicant for reaching out to us on this project. Overall, we believe the applicant has done a nice job cleaning up some of the inappropriate changes that have happened to the house over the years. Our concern is the additional piazza enclosure. As you know, the BAR has a strong policy against piazza enclosures. One criteria for considering piazza enclosures is the following: the necessity for the additional area in which results from the enclosure must be sufficiently compelling and extreme that no other alternative could reasonably accomplish this purpose. The applicant must demonstrate through floor plans, elevations, and photographs that any other alternative solution shall result in unacceptable alterations to the historic fabric of the structure. While the enclosure is very nicely designed, we are not convinced that the proposed enclosure for a bathroom and closets is sufficiently compelling to make an exception to this important policy. If an exception to this policy is to be made, there must be a positive balance toward the preservation of the house overall. While cleaning up the exterior is an improvement, we strongly believe that more should be done to ensure that a net positive for the historic character of the house. This potentially could be achieved by removing the remaining existing portion of the porch infill so that the original full form of the piazza can be read, or the interior could be reconfigured with additional square feet added to the back of the house. We respectfully but emphatically recommend denial of this application, as we do not believe the applicant has met the criteria for the BAR's piazza enclosure policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
That concludes the public comment.
Thank you, Tori. We'll move to city staff comments and recommendation.
Observations from staff: although not visible from the public right of way, we do appreciate the simplification of the fenestration and the replacement of square column on the rear portion of the piazza. And as for comments, the proposal cleans up a variety of insensitive fenestration elements which were unoriginal and replaces a portion of the original piazza railing. These are balanced with the proposal for new enclosure, which has little visibility from public rights of way and is treated with shutters. Staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with board and staff comment.
Thank you, Frankie. Does the applicant have any response to public or city staff comments?
I'll just say, I mean, we obviously respect Historic Charleston Foundation and the position that they need to take on this. We feel like this is really minimally impactful to the public right of way. And while I suppose there's some sort of strange way that we could hide this, we don't think that would be what's best for this house. We've really tried to think of it holistically and what cleans it up from all angles and functionally makes it work the best. I wish there was more we could do to kind of make the whole thing read, but it's hard to do that without really losing bathroom space. This is not a massive house. This is relatively minimal. We feel like this is a nice proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. We'll move on to board discussion and vote.
Well, I'll start. Seems like I always start on these things. All right, so I was going to say, I do think, the board policy of enclosing the piazza is important. Having said that, this already has been altered a good bit, and it won't be as visible as some others would be. But I'm looking at the floor plan, and it seems to me in that laundry, I mean, we're talking about the laundry wall, and it seems to me if you just rotated the location of the washer and dryer and put them where the sink is, flipped it around, you could shift that wall back towards the house another foot and a half or so. And I would think that would actually, from the public right of way, the visibility would go a long way toward minimizing what you'd actually see. And it doesn't exactly help Historic Charleston Foundation's position, but it would allow them to have the laundry. It just would be, a little bit smaller. It's a pretty gracious laundry now. And the impact to the street would be lessened. I will say that the architects that have done a great job with, if you're going to do it, here's the way to do it. But to me, I don't know why you couldn't just push it back another foot and a half or so and make it less visible.
I guess my thoughts, make sure I'm on. Is there a plan or something we could put up? Sorry again, or a elevation? Thank you. That is, again, in looking at the plan and to Mr. Bello's comment, you certainly could pull that back, but it's basically a one-room wide house where these ancillary functions are off the side. It's always has already been messed with on that side elevation. And in looking at those side elevations, Frankie, if you're able, or Tori, which is the A202 in the drawing set, and even from the perspective that the applicant put it, I just find a hard time saying that what's proposed isn't even maybe more respectful of the fact that a piazza was there than what's there, or something pulled back a little bit. It's a more attractive solution, and it does, I think, check the box that short of messing with that interior house plan, which is really just one room wide, there's not a better way to do it. Now, if this were on the front and significantly visible and hadn't been altered before, all of those things, absolutely. But in this case, I feel like it's a handsome solution and more appropriate and attractive than what's there present.
Yeah. I do agree. It's much more handsome. I think they've done a great job.
Fillmore here. Yeah. Hey, to your point, I always struggle with, enclosing a porch, the mandates are pretty clear about it, that the board, except in extreme circumstances, simply does not support it. This is not terribly visible, and it's absolutely correct that if you look at the elevations, that additional enclosure grounds the second floor instead of, it's visually way more attractive. And the unfortunate thing is it's a porch enclosure, which makes it tough. And it is, even though it is marginally visible, it is visible. So I'm a little torn by it, but there's just no question that it's a visually better solution than what exists right now. And there is a trade-off, because we certainly have in the past allowed trade-offs when something else significant to the house is being corrected. And there are some nice corrections, particularly with the fenestration and on this, and the change in the second floor enclosure is I think significantly more appropriate than what is currently there. So.
And to that point, Fillmore,
that's my positive comments.
Yes, sir. But in looking at that elevation and the way they've got it marked out, if there's like you said, trying to barter for what they're giving for what they get, it's the improvements to those areas that are presently just siding and kind of no rhyme or reason of where the enclosure is or a window are not insignificant, and feel like what's happening below is, is that a detriment to the character, the quality of this building? And just personally, I don't think it is.
Yes. And I do agree with all of that. And I would be okay with it, with approval, motion for approval, unless Bill you've got some comments.
I do not have any supplemental comments to what you guys have discussed. I think you hit really all the important points of this, and I'm leaning towards the fact that obviously enclosing porches is something that we definitely do try to avoid at all costs. But Fillmore, you made a really good point that when there's a balance of corrections and things going on this home as well. And I think to me, it's tilted the scale to say that this is a more aesthetically appealing solution that is proposed. The other thing that just strikes me about this house is, I think even the applicant said it, it's been well maintained. It's a crisp, nice little house. And I think this actually makes it look better. So that's my only input to that.
All right, well, I'll make a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments and final details to staff.
Okay, we have a motion for conceptual approval with staff's comments and final details to staff. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Fava. I'll call the vote. Eddie Bello,
Yay in favor.
Eddie Fava,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
and the chair votes yay in favor. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron,
Thank you.
I would like to just real quick make sure that for staff's clarity, that when you guys do, because we kind of talked about this last time, a motion for conceptual approval with final details to staff, you are foregoing the preliminary review and the final review, because the next step would be final review to us, right?
Yes.
Okay. Right.
So they can submit final details for staff review.
The full submittal is required, obviously, for the review, as it would be with us. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Tori, we're kicking the can to you.
Thanks.
Or
I mean,
to staff. That's
I don't think
right.
anybody's
adjourn?
worried. Is anybody worried?
Adjourned, right?
No.
Motion. Do I have a
I'm not
motion to
worried.
adjourn, by the way, real quick?
Yes.
Eddie?
I
Thank you.
motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
No, there's no concern. Just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that we were of the same understanding.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it so y'all can just sign off and